There is no humanitarian crisis.
The war is with all the civilians.
Hey everyone, this is David, producer for The Benjamin Dixon Show, and like it or not, with the ongoing crisis and conflict in Israel, specifically in Gaza, we're all aware of the humanitarian crisis, I think. Possibly not. Seems like the Israeli government is not. On Sky News a couple of days ago, Israel's ambassador to the UK was on Sky News and was asked about the humanitarian crisis, and she seemed to be a bit unaware.
What's the view on the humanitarian crisis in Gaza this morning?
There is no humanitarian crisis because...
There isn't?
There is no. Israel is in charge of the safety of the Israelis. Hamas is in charge of the safety of the Palestinians.
This is a reoccurring argument that we've been hearing, that because it's Palestinian territory and Hamas rules Gaza, that it's Hamas's responsibility. But Gaza is still a part of Israel. And if Israel is not responsible for Gaza, then one would wonder why they have security checkpoints in Gaza, why they limit Palestinian movement in Gaza, not just at the border, but in Gaza, and why they're occupying territory that they claim Hamas is responsible for. Back to the clip, though. The anchor on Sky News pushed back, and the ambassador took a tone that you might not expect.
We've been showing pictures this morning that would illustrate that there is a humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Are you a mother?
Yes.
What would you think if your children would have been executed in front of your eyes? Would you expect your government to think about those Nazis committing those crimes and to say, wait a second, first of all, we need to protect the enemy, and then to protect my children?
Who are the Nazis and who's the enemy in this scenario? She seems to be implying that everyone in Gaza is the enemy, that everyone in Gaza is equivalent to Nazis. But I thought that Israel wasn't going after the civilians. I thought Israel was targeting Hamas. I thought Hamas was on the other side of this war, not civilians. We know that civilians on both sides are stuck in the middle of the war, are stuck in between the two sides, but I thought that Israel was fighting Hamas, not Palestinians as a whole. I guess I missed that somewhere in Israel's talking points. To be sure, Israel should be going after those that committed the atrocity that was Hamas's attack in Israel. Specifically, going after innocent Israelis, going through neighborhoods and killing civilians. But the humanitarian crisis that the ambassador is being asked about is of innocent Palestinians in Gaza that are having bombs rained down on them. No fuel, no food, no water until recently, and no way out of Gaza. Thousands are being killed as Israel claims it's targeting Hamas, but is instead carpet bombing the entire area. So the question is, who is the enemy? Because if Israel wanted to retaliate and get retribution, they would be specifically targeting Hamas, one would think, especially when they have state-of-the-art weaponry, technology, and systems that have been provided by the United States and others. So the interaction continued.
Your children come as priority to your prime minister.
So
Do you know that?
We have been showing images this morning that illustrate that there is a humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
So blame Hamas and ask Hamas why they started those atrocities, walking around.
So you acknowledge that there is a humanitarian crisis?
I'm saying there is no. Israel is working.
So what do you think is happening?
What is happening? There is a war in Gaza, a war that Hamas started by committing a horrible massacre on innocent Israelis. The world have seen that. I've seen that. Wait a second.
That are innocent civilians.
Just I want to say and give a little bit of a context. Those people created crimes that are worse than ISIS. When the Americans started this fight of ISIS, together with the coalition forces, over 100,000 civilians got caught in a crossfire. Israel is trying to prevent that. Israel is better than any other army in the world. We are alerting, we are giving them the opportunity to have a shelter. We are doing things that no other Western army did in the past.
So there's a lot there, but we'll start with the ISIS comparison. This is something that Israel's been pushing. If you look on social media, they have graphics and videos saying that Hamas is ISIS or that Hamas equals ISIS. And yeah, we get the talking points. The tactics are very similar, if not the same, in many cases. But to say that they're the same conflates that they're one and the same, that ISIS is in Israel, that ISIS is in Gaza. She went on to say that the Israeli army is alerting Palestinians in Gaza and giving them the opportunity to take shelter. That's curious when it's not just Hamas facilities and Hamas infrastructure that's being targeted, but residential areas in Gaza, hospitals in Gaza, refugee camps, specifically the UN refugee camp, schools. And there's confirmation from reporters, journalists, and civilians themselves all saying there's no safe place in Gaza. Because when they go to seek shelter in all of these places that one would think would be safe from targeting, they're still being targeted. And these areas are being wiped out. And the number of casualties of innocent civilians is rapidly climbing. So how exactly are they trying to prevent it? Not like they're letting Palestinians out of Gaza. We already know from the former deputy foreign minister that the only way out would be to go into Egypt, and they can't get into Egypt because the Rafah crossing is closed. And when that former official was asked about Palestinians being allowed into Israel, well, this was his response.
To the wall. We want to open a humanitarian corridor so they can leave. But if Hamas...
So that who can leave? Citizens? You're saying civilians can leave, but only through the Rafah border, correct?
At this point, yes.
So they can't
come...
Because
where else?
Your country! They can come into Israel!
I'm telling you one more thing I want to say.
I want you to address that point. Don't just smile, sir, respectfully. You're saying you're making a corridor. They can go to Egypt. You're bombing them. You say you want to save them, but they can't come in.
But this goes further, because while Israel is claiming that the war is with Hamas, there seems to be cracks in this narrative, and they're getting deeper and deeper, the cracks. This is a clip from CNN of Abby Phillip speaking with Israeli soldier Bezalel Talja. When I saw the version of this clip that was only 13 seconds long going around social media, I wasn't sure if it was edited, doctored, or fake. But it's not, because Abby Phillip posted it herself. She posted the full segment. When Bezalel Talja was asked about the war, this is what he said.
You are actively leading a number of soldiers in your community. Tell us how you and your fellow soldiers are preparing for what your country is heading into right now, which could very well be a prolonged war with Hamas.
I try to correct you to the answer. The war is not just with Hamas. The war is with all the civilians that cannot see us as human beings. They want to kill us, because what I saw in that place near Gaza, civilians from Gaza came on bicycles to the kibbutz just to kill and destroy. It's not just, like people that are warriors of Hamas. I cannot even call them warriors. They are not warriors. Somebody that fights with kids and women is not a warrior. They are not warriors. They are nothing. They are monsters. So monsters from Hamas, civilians from Hamas, and came and kill people.
The attack by Hamas was really Palestinian civilians, and the war is not just with Hamas, but with Palestinian civilians. Now, we should make sure that this is clear. Obviously, fighters in Hamas are Palestinians, so they would classify as Palestinian civilians in a sense. The young militants in Hamas, they were recruited and radicalized, in no small part because of the occupation by Israel and the experience of living under that occupation. But if the truth is that Israel is waging war on all of Palestine and all Palestinian civilians, well, then things make a little bit more sense. Look, Hamas is definitely not to be defended. The attack that they committed was heinous, and there's no excuse for it. It's indefensible. But to make Hamas and Palestinian civilians one and the same, and that Hamas is representative of the Palestinian people, is false, especially when you know that only 26% of Palestinian people, as of March of this year, support Hamas. It's really a bad situation when you have innocent people on both sides stuck in a conflict, and a government that occupies a minority and has decided they are going to target the entire population instead of specifically the culprits. And let's keep in mind that Hamas's leadership is likely not in Gaza. While some of Hamas's leadership has been taken out, the big guys are not there. They're safe away from all the violence, while the Palestinian people, the broad majority of whom are innocent, are facing the wrath of Israel because of what Hamas did. We'll keep following events as they unfold. Let us know what you think in the comments.